The descent into chaos does not begin with the blade itself, but with the sound of footsteps that refuse to stop, echoing down a sterile hallway that was never meant to hold fear. Inside the quiet, controlled space of the clinic, where healing is supposed to take place and where order is carefully maintained through routine and reason, something far more volatile is unfolding, something that does not belong in a place built on calm. Taylor senses it before she sees it, before the door is even forced open, before the air shifts into something suffocating. There is a presence approaching, one that carries with it the weight of unresolved rage, of obsession that has been simmering beneath the surface for far too long. And when Sheila Carter finally appears, there is no pretense, no attempt at civility, only a raw, unfiltered intensity that transforms the room into something unrecognizable. Sheila does not enter as a woman seeking answers. She enters as someone who has already decided what the truth is and has come to force it into the open by any means necessary. Her eyes are locked onto Taylor with a focus that leaves no room for distraction, no space for negotiation. Every movement she makes is deliberate, controlled on the surface, yet trembling with something just beneath it, something that threatens to break through at any moment. She demands confrontation, demands acknowledgement, demands that Taylor stop hiding behind explanations that she no longer believes. The accusations come quickly, each one sharper than the last, cutting through any attempt at calm discussion. And Taylor, who has spent her life navigating emotional turmoil with composure and clarity, finds herself on unfamiliar ground, because this is not a conversation that can be guided or redirected. This is a storm that has already begun. Taylor's instinct is to de-escalate, to find a way to reach Sheila through reason, through empathy, through the fragile thread of humanity that she has always believed exists in everyone, no matter how deeply buried. But that instinct falters under the weight of Sheila's intensity, because there is no space for reason in a moment defined by obsession. Every word Taylor offers is met not with understanding, but with resistance, twisted into something else, something that feeds the narrative Sheila has already constructed in her mind. The room begins to feel smaller, the exits more distant, as Sheila positions herself in a way that is both subtle and unmistakable, cutting off any easy path of escape. What makes the moment truly terrifying is not just the threat itself, but the realization that Sheila is no longer operating within the boundaries she has been trying to maintain. There had been a version of her recently that seemed contained, controlled, almost stable. But that version is slipping, unraveling under the pressure of everything she believes has been taken from her. And as that unraveling accelerates, the danger becomes immediate. The blade appears without warning. It is not large, not dramatic, but it does not need to be. The simple presence of it shifts everything, transforms the confrontation into something far more dangerous. Sheila's hand grips it with a familiarity that suggests this is not an act of hesitation, not a moment of uncertainty. It is a decision. The air in the room changes instantly, charged with a tension that feels almost electric, as though time itself is holding its breath. Taylor steps back, her mind racing, searching for options that seem to vanish as quickly as they appear. There is nowhere to go, nowhere to retreat without turning her back, without risking something worse. She tries to speak, to reach Sheila, but her voice feels fragile against the weight of what is unfolding. Because this is no longer about words. It is about action, about the line that Sheila is about to cross. And then she does. The movement is sudden, violent, driven by something that has finally broken free. The blade cuts through the space between them with terrifying speed, aimed not with precision, but with force, with the full weight of everything Sheila has been holding back. It is the kind of moment that unfolds too quickly for thought, too quickly for strategy, existing only as a reaction, as instinct, as survival. But before it can reach its target, something interrupts it. Deacon Sharp enters not as a calculated presence, but as a force of pure instinct, moving faster than reason, driven by something deeper than logic. He does not hesitate, does not weigh the consequences, does not consider what it means for him. He sees the danger, and he moves into it. The impact is immediate. The blade finds him instead. There is a moment, brief and unbearable, where everything freezes, where the reality of what has just happened struggles to take shape. And then it does, all at once, with devastating clarity. The sound that follows is not just a scream, but something deeper, something torn from a place of pure shock and horror as Taylor watches the man who stepped between her and death collapse under the weight of that decision. Blood spreads quickly, staining the sterile environment with a violence that feels almost surreal, as though it does not belong in this space, as though the room itself rejects it even as it becomes impossible to ignore. Deacon's body gives way, his strength failing under the injury that he did not hesitate to take, and when he hits the ground, the finality of the moment becomes impossible to deny. Taylor moves instantly, dropping to her knees beside him, her hands pressing against the wound in a desperate attempt to stop what cannot be easily stopped. Her mind shifts into something automatic, clinical, pulling from every ounce of training she has, every instinct she has developed over years of trying to save others. But beneath that, beneath the practiced precision, there is something else, something raw and undeniable. Fear. Not abstract, not distant, but immediate and overwhelming. Because this is not just a patient. This is Deacon. And in this moment, she understands something she has been trying not to fully acknowledge. The connection she feels, the attachment she has allowed to grow quietly, without definition, without declaration, is no longer something she can deny. It is there, undeniable, in the way her hands shake despite her efforts to steady them, in the way her voice cracks as she calls his name, in the way the thought of losing him hits her with a force that leaves her breathless. Across the room, Sheila stands frozen. The transformation is immediate and profound. The rage that had fueled her moments before drains away, replaced by something far more fragile, far more terrifying. Shock. Not the kind that comes from witnessing violence, but the kind that comes from realizing that she is the one who caused it. Her grip loosens, the blade slipping from her hand as though it has suddenly become something foreign, something she does not recognize. She looks at Deacon, at the man who had stood by her, who had believed in her, who had defended her even when no one else would. And in that moment, the reality of what she has done crashes down on her with a force that leaves her unsteady, unable to process, unable to reconcile the person she believed she was becoming with the action she has just taken. She does not speak. Because there are no words that can exist in that space. The arrival of Steffi Forrester and John Finnegan does not bring relief. It brings another wave of shock, another layer of emotional impact that only intensifies the chaos already unfolding. They step into a scene that feels almost unreal, their eyes taking in the blood, the fallen body, the desperate attempts to save him, and the woman standing at the center of it all, her expression a mixture of horror and disbelief. Steffi's reaction is immediate, visceral, unfiltered. The sight of Sheila, of the damage she has caused, ignites something in her that has never truly gone away, something that has only been waiting for the right moment to resurface. The anger is not new. It is old, deeply rooted, built from years of pain and loss and fear. But in this moment, it becomes something sharper, more focused, directed entirely at the woman who stands before her. Her gaze locks onto Sheila, and in it is everything she has ever felt, every reason she has ever had to fear her, to hate her, to believe that she cannot change. The scene in front of her becomes proof, confirmation that whatever progress Sheila claimed to have made was always fragile, always temporary, always one step away from collapse. Taylor, still holding Deacon, does not look up immediately. Her world has narrowed to the man in her arms, to the fragile thread of life she is trying to hold on to. But when she does, when her eyes meet Sheila's, there is no accusation in them, no anger, only a deep, aching realization of what this moment means, of what has been lost, of what may never be regained. Sheila cannot hold that gaze. Because for the first time, she sees herself not as she imagined, not as the woman trying to rebuild, but as the woman who has just destroyed something she cannot fix. The sound of sirens cuts through the chaos, growing louder, closer, signaling the arrival of something external, something that will attempt to impose order on a situation that has already spiraled beyond control. Police flood the space, voices raised, commands issued, but their presence does little to calm what has already been set in motion. Because some things cannot be contained, some moments cannot be undone. And as Deacon lies motionless, his fate uncertain, suspended between life and something far more final, the question that hangs in the air is not just whether he will survive. It is what will be left of all of them if he does not. The sound of sirens does not bring relief. It fractures the moment into something harsher, more real, as if the outside world has finally caught up with the violence that has already taken place. Inside the clinic, time no longer flows in a steady line but breaks into fragments, voices overlapping, footsteps rushing, commands shouted without fully landing. Yet at the center of it all, there is only one truth that matters. Deacon Sharp is still on the floor, and the fragile boundary between life and death has not yet been decided. Taylor does not hear the police at first, nor does she register the presence of anyone else. Her world has narrowed to the space beneath her hands, to the warmth of blood that refuses to stop flowing, to the rhythm of Deacon's breathing that flickers uncertainly between presence and absence. Every ounce of her training is engaged, every instinct sharpened to a single purpose. Keep him here, keep him alive, do not let him slip away. And yet, beneath that controlled urgency, something far less manageable is rising, something deeply personal, something she has been unwilling to name until now. The fear is not clinical. It is not detached. It is rooted in the terrifying realization that losing him would not just be a failure of duty, but a loss she would carry in a way she has not allowed herself to acknowledge before. When John Finnegan kneels beside her, the shift is immediate but not calming. His presence brings structure, precision, a second pair of hands that understand exactly what needs to be done, yet even that does not lessen the intensity of the moment. Finn moves quickly, assessing the wound, applying pressure, issuing instructions with the calm authority of someone who has faced this edge before. But even he cannot mask the severity of what he is seeing. The injury is deep, dangerously so, and the margin for error is non-existent. Steffi stands just behind them, her body rigid, her gaze locked onto Sheila Carter with a fury that feels almost physical in its force. For her, the scene does not exist in isolation. It is not just about this moment, this act of violence. It is the culmination of everything she has ever feared, every warning she has ever given, every instinct that told her Sheila was not someone who could be trusted to change. And now, that fear has materialized in the most devastating way possible. She steps forward, her voice cutting through the chaos with a sharpness that leaves no room for misunderstanding. There is no attempt at restraint, no effort to soften the words. The accusation is direct, absolute, fueled by years of anger that have found their target once again. She does not care about context, about explanations, about the fragile shock that now defines Sheila's expression. To Steffi, there is only cause and effect, action and consequence. And in this equation, Sheila is the one who crossed the line. Sheila does not respond immediately. Because for the first time in a long time, she does not have a defense that can hold. Her eyes remain fixed on Deacon, on the man who stepped between her, and the outcome she was too consumed to fully understand until it was too late. The reality of what she has done does not arrive all at once. It seeps in, piece by piece, each fragment heavier than the last. The blade had been meant for someone else. The anger had been directed outward, justified in her own mind, contained within a narrative where she was not the villain, but the one fighting to reclaim something she believed had been taken from her. But now, that narrative has shattered completely. Because Deacon was not her enemy. He was the one who stayed, the one who believed, the one who saw something in her that no one else was willing to see. And she has just destroyed that. Her hands tremble, empty now, as if she no longer knows what to do with them. The absence of the blade feels almost surreal, as though the object that defined the moment has already begun to fade into something she cannot fully grasp. She takes a step back, then another, not in an attempt to escape, but because she cannot remain where she is without confronting the full weight of what has happened. The police move in quickly, their presence cutting through the emotional chaos with procedural efficiency. Commands are issued, questions asked, hands reaching to secure, to separate, to restore order where none exists. Sheila is surrounded before she fully registers it, her body guided rather than forced, as though even the officers sense that resistance is not what they will encounter here. Because Sheila is not fighting. She is unraveling. As they take her into custody, her gaze does not leave Deacon. It is the only point of focus she can hold on to, the only thing that feels real in a moment that has fractured everything else. There is no anger left in her expression, no defiance, only a hollow, disbelieving grief that begins to take shape as the reality settles in. Steffi watches it all with a rigid intensity, her anger not diminishing but sharpening into something more controlled, more dangerous. She does not step forward again, does not interfere as Sheila is taken away. Because in her mind, the outcome is already decided. This is not a moment of ambiguity. This is confirmation. And she will not forget it. Across the room, Taylor's focus finally shifts as Finn stabilizes Deacon enough for transport. The moment she releases pressure, even slightly, feels like a risk she is not ready to take, but she knows it must happen. She knows that this is now beyond what she can do here, that he needs more than what this space can provide. And yet, letting go, even for a second, feels like surrender. When the paramedics move in, when they lift him, when they begin the process of taking him away, something inside her tightens, resisting the separation even as she understands it is necessary. She moves with them, not as a doctor now, but as someone who cannot remain behind, who cannot stand still while his fate is decided elsewhere. Steffi follows, her attention shifting from Sheila to Taylor, from anger to something more protective, more grounded. She sees the change in her mother, sees the depth of the emotion that has surfaced in a way that cannot be ignored. And in that moment, her understanding shifts slightly, not enough to soften her anger toward Sheila, but enough to recognize that this is no longer just about conflict. This is about loss, or the possibility of it. The hospital becomes the next stage of the unfolding crisis, a space where urgency continues, but in a different form, where action is structured, contained, yet no less intense. Deacon is taken into surgery almost immediately, the doors closing with a finality that leaves those outside suspended in uncertainty. There is nothing to do now but wait. And waiting becomes its own kind of torment. Taylor stands just outside the operating room, her hands still stained, her mind replaying every second, every movement, every decision. She knows, intellectually, that she did everything she could, that the outcome now rests in the hands of a surgical team. But knowledge does not quiet the fear, does not ease the weight pressing down on her chest. Because this is not just about skill or outcome. It is about him, about what he means, about what she might lose. Steffi remains close, her presence steady, grounding, though her own emotions remain turbulent beneath the surface. She watches her mother, understanding more now than she did before, seeing the depth of what has grown between Taylor and Deacon, even if it was never fully spoken. And that understanding brings with it a new layer of anger, because it reframes the entire situation in a way that makes Sheila's actions even more unforgivable. Finn moves between them, offering what reassurance he can, though he knows better than to promise anything. He has seen too many outcomes, too many variables, to give false certainty. Instead, he focuses on what can be said, what can be held onto, what remains possible. But possibility is not enough. Not when everything feels so close to being lost. Hours pass, though they do not feel like hours. Time becomes distorted, stretched thin by anticipation and fear. Every movement, every sound, every shift in the environment draws attention, holds significance, until finally, the doors open. The surgeon steps out. And in that moment, everything hangs in the balance. Because whatever comes next will not just determine whether Deacon lives or dies. It will determine what remains of the fragile connections that have been shattered in the wake of this violence, what can be rebuilt, what cannot, and whether any of them can